Komodi, I hope I pronounced the name well, President of the Internal Auditing Norms Board from the International Auditors Institute. Welcome. Thank you very much. Hello and good morning to all of you. It is a pleasure to start this second day with a topic that I love and that I have been working on during my whole life, my professional life. And I am convinced that to face the great development challenges that we have in the region, and yesterday when Maloney and Javier gave us very good insights during the initial plenary, of the challenge of low productivity, the fact that our countries don't necessarily have digital strategies as a state policy, the fact that we don't have knowledge to capitalize on our growth. And so today we're going to deepen regarding how digital technologies, and especially emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence, like machine learning, like blockchain, and like data analytics, are transforming financial management and audit management. And I would like to tell you a story. I have known Javier for many years from the public secretary in Mexico, and I was in charge of digital governance, and we had to digitalize 5,000 procedures and put them in a platform, gov.mx, and we were a team that was really in love with our responsibility. And then I got my first auditing job, and I got a document signed, and I was responsible for implementing the digital signature in Mexico. So there was a lot of there were a lot of public officials that had to solve all of the information requirements from my internal controller's office. And I said, why? Because their work plan is very aggressive. And so how can I use part of my team to respond to the audit? But I had to do it. I had no option. And the digital government unit was full of papers and papers and more papers, and we were reviewed and reviewed and reviewed, and we answered and answered and answered, and the work didn't stop because we had an audit. So this was a great calling to understand the great challenges that we have in a public function that was responsible of enabling the digital agenda for the country. A very important commitment or work to digitalize all procedures, but also we had to respond to internal requirements. And I am very happy because during this hour and a half, we're going to listen to very concrete examples on how technology is changing today, the activities that are important, the activities that we have to comply with, but that have to be carried out more efficiently, much more efficiently, much more accurately, and seeking to better use resources without impacting the work of digitalizing 5,000 services, and even though taking time to answer. And I will never forget this because I have many pictures of how our office looked with all these papers inside. Okay, so how is the session structured? We're going to have a first round of presentations that are going to last 10 minutes. We're going to have slides, but they are just to orient you, because I believe that each of the people in the panel, because the people in the panel have a lot of experience, then we will have a second round of questions, and we are going to reserve space for your questions, because here the most important thing is for us to leave the room inspired so that we can move to action. The good thing about digital technology is that we use it. We open ChatGPT every day. We use Copilot every day, or any technology that you use. So, for example, we open the company online, no, we don't open it. We do the auditing online, or we don't do it. So this is very practical matter. And so I hope that as you listen to the examples that we will provide today, you will reflect on how can I do a better job. And I can assure you that you will, the takeaways from this session will be very concrete things that you can use for action in your daily work. And for the questions, we have a QR code. I know that you can all read QR codes, so you can send your questions during the sessions. Don't keep any questions to yourselves. So this is the objective of this plenary, and the questions will get to my WhatsApp. And when we get to the Q&R session, we will answer to your questions, the questions that you have sent. And now we were going to listen to Rodrigo Vera, who had the good fortune of living in Chile for 2 years. And I love that country very much. And that's why I'm very happy to have 2 Chilean representatives with me today. And I would like you to share, Rodrigo, how you're doing in EY. How are you including these emergent technologies in the auditing practices? How are the clients reacting to these possibilities? But also, what are the challenges that you have seen in including these technologies, but also their auditability? So please go ahead. Thank you very much, Yolanda. Can you hear me well? Yes, perfectly. I can see a lot of experience in this room. All of us have gone through multiple technologies and changes. And when you think about the world of accounting, and that's associated to the world of technology, actually, it's the contrary. What we do on a daily basis is powered by technology. We I can remember the 1, 2, 3, the Lotus 1, 2, and 3 versions. Do you remember this? And then we went to Excel, right? It looked wonderful. Maybe there are other auditors here. I remember that before the year 2000, auditing was a lot of paper. It was strange to see a laptop. And my first laptop weighed like 10 kilos. And we also had a lot of work papers. And the truth is that the evolution of technology makes us better professionals, and this frees time for the things that truly matter. And it also enables to see more. We have also seen that technologies are growing exponentially. I don't know if you remember, but ChatGPT was issued in November 2022, only 30 months ago. And I don't know if you use the first versions, but really, in the first versions, the quality of answers was that the answers were full of hallucinations, and we had to make a lot of changes. But 30 months have gone by, and I don't know if you have tested the last version, and it's amazing. Finding technical errors is almost impossible. And so this shows us that if we are not capable of adapting technology to what we do daily, we will lose relevance. And we have a great opportunity to generate more value to the community, to our clients, and to the capital market. Having said this, at EY, we understood this several years ago. And around the year 2022, we said, you know what? There's a new technology that is not only going to power me, it's also pointing at something that's inherent to human beings. It's human intelligence. And this is a game changer, as our American friends say. And so we created a great program called the NEON program, NEON project, and we said, you know what, we need to invest in artificial intelligence to do what? So that our people could have a better experience, and through technology could generate more trust in the market. And so what have we been doing? It's very simple. We are generating artificial intelligence developments for multiple components in our audit process. You could say, well, this is very tedious. I don't know if you have done a gap checklist, for example, when you have, for example, to review, for example, they're disclosing their accounting principles. It was financial statements of 30 or 40 pages. And today, for example, we get financial statements that have 350 pages. That's a long process. That's a lot of information that's being disclosed. And as auditors, we have to understand. And today, we can do that with artificial intelligence. Just to give you some examples, what are we doing today with artificial intelligence and UI? We have a lot of tools, and this allows us to improve risk evolution through the scrapping of a battery of information across several industries. And what artificial intelligence does is that it proposes risk assessment based what it's seen in the rest of the world. And this improves my risk assessment process to improve my auditing in general. Today, I don't need a person to do the tick and tie, in a huge financial statement. This is done by a machine, but it assists me. It doesn't make decisions. Human make decisions. Why? Because machines do still make mistakes, and they still don't have critical thinking. We're also developing our internal ChatGPT EYQ. So 2 years ago, ChatGPT was issued, but we generated this internal chat to be able to work in a secure environment. And this is something that all big companies are doing today because there are privacy issues and we have to protect our clients. I don't know if you have seen this, but we use more and more technology, and our clients do as well. And all application controls generate transactions, and this makes it more difficult to read them. And so with artificial intelligence today, what I do is read those codes to be able to understand what they do. Before we infer that, for example, interest control in a bank, when they calculate interest is a P by Q, and if they had the main result, they said that the control was okay. Then when you open the Pandora box and you see the configuration of that source code, that's where you really know the reality of things. And it's the same today. It's machines auditing machines. It's not people auditing machines. And what does this create? The quality increases, efficiency increases. Why do we increase? What does it increase quality? Because we can see more and faster. I do not wonder today what happened between month 3 and 4. Why? Because today I have all the accounting in my system. I have their data, their daily operations, and through data analytics, I can tell them what is the accounting element that's an outlier and the data C that we need to understand. And so, as I have always said, auditors like to see underwater, have always liked to see underwater, but now we're using glasses underwater, and that allows us to have more granularity. And just to finish, because I have a huge timer in front of me, this brings a lot of challenges, of course. And what is the thing here? Technology without talent is just infrastructure. If technology does not serve a purpose that is giving out a good service, it's useless. But that creates a huge challenge for the organization, for us who provide services, but also for the companies themselves. We need to have a strategy that seeks to understand what are the capacities that we want to boost and how we're going to transform people. Many people say here, you know what, I'm going to be replaced by a guy that knows how to use artificial intelligence. But I would say no. Why? Because artificial intelligence generative artificial intelligence still has many errors, and those errors cannot be seen by a person that doesn't have experience. And in this room, we have all of the accumulated experience that allows to see errors. And when you're assisted by a machine, you can see what's wrong and correct it. And so here, the combination of experience and the use of technology, and also when young people grow in their knowledge, they're going to have the right mix. But right now, it's a huge risk to put these tools in the hands of non-experienced people because they won't see the errors. Sometimes we think I'm going to be replaced, but actually no, because people that don't have experience cannot see the errors in the information generated by artificial intelligence. There's also the matter of data privacy. Data privacy. If you have bad data, you have bad results. And that is that also generates a huge problem. And then there's a very important paradigm change with the use of technology. From our perspective, we sell work hours to our countries, professional hours. But today, that professional is not only that person, it's technological suite that's behind, and it becomes a service that's enabled by technology. And that concept changes because clients can tell you, you know what, now that you have a tool that takes 10 hours, less, you have to charge me less. But to use that tool, I had to invest millions of dollars to be able to read the millions of additional data that you have in your systems today, and even to implement security. And so the concept behind changes. What's important now is that technology not only helps me, it also is better for the client's experience, asking better questions, having more effective communication systems, working in a more coordinated manner, makes the process a better experience for everyone.
Muchísimas gracias, Rodrigo. Me quedé con varias reflexiones. La tecnología.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. I have several thoughts. Technology without talent is mere infrastructure. And I believe that one of the great challenges is how we make sure that all people in our work teams know how to use technology to make activities easier, but also how to innovate. If I have access to samples, for example, but also if I have access to everything, how do I use the right questions? How do I get out the right answers? ChatGPT. And how do we do with the younger people that don't have the experience that we have in this room? And that is key to be able to analyze the different components in this technology. And now we're going to listen to Dorothy, General Controller in Chile. I know that you have been working with data analytics a lot, and this has a lot of safeguards, especially in the public sector, in terms of privacy, in terms of anonymization, but also in revolutioning the experiences of the public sector regarding auditing activities. I hope that today the audit areas will not go through the same experience I went through. And I hope that these tools will be used to make public function more assertive. So please tell us about your experience in the controller's office and also the challenges. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. While the presentation appears on the screen, I'm going to tell you about the evolution that we've gone through. First of all, Rodrigo, can you please give me the device? So when the digital signature law was approved in your country, we were very fearful because we thought, how are we going to do our inspections with these changes? And in this first change, we did some first audits that were pretty initial to review how this legislation was being implemented in our country. And so please here, help me with the presentation. We had an evolution from the first law until we created our first systems auditing unit. We created this unit that was created by informatic engineers, IT engineers. We had a lot of men, and then we had a first woman that helped us to start with these reviews in the institutions where we would review how the new legislation was being implemented. And then we started strengthening that team, and we got to a point in which the team became very necessary for other audits, financial audits. Something's happening with the presentation. Maybe the technicians can help us because we're precisely talking about technology. I don't know why it's not moving forward. And so that evolution was a difficult process. At the same time, we had a team preparing to audit the systems in the public institutions. But our own technology center had to change, had to, evolve. First, we had engineers that were experts that were doing their programming in a certain language that became obsolete. And that's one thing that happens in organizations. We have to adapt, and we cannot fire people. We have to reinvent these people, train them in the new technologies, train them in the new languages. We were programming in a system, in a language, and then we had to start programming in Python or in other languages that are easier in terms of artificial intelligence. So these are the kinds of things that started to happen organically. But then there are also other challenges that have to do with the installation of artificial intelligence, and not only that, the automation of processes in institutions, especially when it comes to public institutions. What are our challenges? A main challenge is that the data that we use in the auditing sector, inspection sector, are data that have legal protection. And artificial intelligence has to do with data use. And this is sensitive data. This is data that has to do with national security matters. And so this is data that we have to safeguard for example, sanitary reasons. And so the use of this data in the public sector has a limitation, which is very sensitive. I'm going to give you an example. In our hundreds of procedures, we have one procedure called the policies, the bail policies. So an official that manages public resources to start working with these resources has to take a policy with an insurance company, because if there's a mistake, the insurance company will have to respond. And those are thousands of policies because we have thousands of public officials in Chile. And so every time that we have this circumstance that someone comes to work for the state, they have to have that policy, and we have to have people entering those policies. And so our teams designed a system. We needed to have thousands of policies before, with thousands of people doing that, and now they are doing that in seconds with open code. And this means entering into that open code and to that algorithm a series of information where you have ID numbers, names, salaries, and the positions of people. And so I cannot use that. I need to have a specific contract with certain safeguards of that information, because I cannot enter into that open system that kind of data and that amount of data. So we will still have to keep our old systems until we have those contracts. And so in seconds, we could process all of the policies from the central level, from Santiago. And during the day, we could process the policies from all of Chile, which means that we would save approximately 5 years of work. But I cannot do that because of a contractual reason. So that's one of the challenges of technology, and not only updating. Another important element has to do, in general, technology helps us do our work faster, but the contrary happens as well. The other example that I'm going to give you has to do with a new product that we call SEEK, and it's the consolidation of circularized information. All auditors know that we circularize banks and public institutions and we consolidate information. So instead of having a long auditing, for example, municipality by municipality, we ask something specific to the different municipalities, and then we present this in a piece of data collection piece. But what's the problem when you have to manage this information? Before, we managed a municipality and we found a certain amount of irregularities. We did a summary to pursue administrative responsibilities. And then we audited another municipality with another summary. But now, since we are working massively, it disappeared. Oh, I'm so happy I knew my slides by heart, because if not, I would not have been able to do the presentation without the slideshow. Okay, so since we're working massively, we don't review municipality by municipality. We do this with a summary in one single time. Out of 345 municipalities in Chile, we found irregularities in 250. How many summaries would we have to do? 250. And so this saves us money and it saves us work. And so we had 250 in the first SIC that we worked on. In the second SIC that we worked on, another amount, 200 and something. And so we automated some reviews, but this created another problem because we're going to have to see how to automate the summaries. But this has another difficulty because the legislation has a procedure that's very complicated in terms of automation. And so this brings additional challenges. Another additional challenge has to do with the efficacy of how we plan the audit. Another challenge is how we train our personnel so that it does not become obsolete and so that we can take advantage of the opportunities with our inspectors. We also have to be very careful with how we manage data. We have a lot of inspectors that have tried to prepare their audit pre-reports. But for that, you have to load the data, and that is public data from institutions like, for example, the Ministry of Defense. And so we have had to be very careful about that. We know that there are a lot of possibilities here. We can review a lot of irregularities in a single time. And what I wanted to show you has to do with a specific review that we did regarding compliance on the registry of people that owe alimonies. And so we took the base from the civil registry. We took the driver licenses, and we did a simple crossing. And when we realized that 70% of municipalities was delivering to these alimony, these people that owed alimonies, some benefits. And then we crossed more data with civil registry, and then we realized that some mayors, that we were giving benefits, social benefits, or even driver's license to people that owe alimonies. And so this was, we were able to see this thanks to technology. And so it's very helpful, but it also entails risk because if the data is not structured enough and it's not well prepared, we can present fake data or false data. We also did another massive review. All public officials are registered in the controller's office in that base that has millions of data because it comes from old data. And so we have that information, and we crossed it with the internal tax services. How many people were receiving income from municipalities in the country? We only did this for municipalities. So we found 106,000 people that were receiving rents from the internal services, so from the municipalities, but they were not registered as municipal workers in our CReCER system. And so with that small crossing, we detected 106,000 non-compliances. But maybe part of those non-compliances had to do with people that weren't registered in time, and not necessarily people that are charging a salary without working. And so we have to do the double check, the ulterior double check. And this is another risk that has to do with the use of technology. I still have 3 minutes left. That's wonderful. And so I would like to use this space to make a calling. In general, we have to work in a coordinated fashion to deepen in something that we have called the national control system. Actually, in Peru, this has a law. In Chile, we don't have that. There are people from the accounting world, from the financial world, but here we also have experts in artificial intelligence or other technologies. And these spaces are useful to discuss this. But in practice, we don't collaborate much. Let me give you a concrete example. In Chile, we have not been able to make the real estate conserver to become automated. So we don't have the possibility to review this online with the use of technology. And so there are officials that are enriching, that are becoming rich through real estate in an undue manner. And in some circumstances, we have been able to get the warnings or the callings to our authorities. I know this happens in other countries. And so you can help us with examples on how we could inspect that, but because that is still in paper, that has not been digitalized, except in Santiago. But in rural places, everything is in books from the 1800s or the 1900s. And so we have to cross information on public officials' declarations of interests. Is how we look at patrimonial evolution. And this is how we detect if they are inscribing properties in real estate conservators. And so that coordination between different institutions would allow us to solve many things. We have support from the banks to boost what we have in our countries and add to what we have in artificial intelligence. And so maybe the bank or the banks that are supporting this event could help our real estate conservators to modernize, and this will allow us to inspect more and detect more. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Madam Controller. I think that these examples were very illustrative. And in the story that you told us, the challenge finding talent to have an internal team for development, and I hope that this will become more diverse now. So what is the challenge regarding application management? Those that are developed at home, that are open source, but also those that are bought. Under what rights are they bought, and how is the information going to be managed and processed? And also the challenge in interoperability and sharing information among institutions. And these topics are under the great topic of digital governance, the great umbrella of digital governance. And so here we have to do key work with the authorities in each country. The case of Chile is José Nostroza, which is in the Ministry of Economy. it's very difficult to have the talent, to have the resources to develop the applications. And so doing this hand in hand with those that can update regulations in terms of digital governance is very important. And so thank you very much. And we're going to join your calling, and you have the support of multilateral organizations for catasters and real estate registries.
Because it's the turn of Maurisan. And he is, let me turn back, because I have 2 pages, the chair of the International Internal Audit Standards Board. And through his immense trajectory, he has the experience to work both with private and public sector. And following on Rodrigo's and Dorothy's example, what type of initiatives can you kindly share that you have implemented or piloted both in public and private sector using emerging technologies for the audit function? Where do you see the biggest benefits, but also the biggest challenges? Over to you, Maurisan.
Thank you. Is technology working? So this is the biggest challenge that we have today because we're so relying on technology, right? So we need to make sure that actually works. Okay, yes, it does. So just a little service announcement for the organizations that I'm representing, the Institute of Internal Auditors. How many of you actually know the Institute of Internal Auditors? Raise your hand. Okay, some. It's actually a very large organization. It has 250,000 membership in 120 countries, and it's represented every country that you're from in Latin America. And here in Peru, we have a very large institute that hosts annual conferences and seminars. So it's actually lots of internal auditors. It's scary seeing that, we have international conference every July, like 3,000 internal auditors gather in one place, right? Would you like to be there and talk to your fellow internal auditors? But anyway, so I am the current chairman of the standards board. We've just released our new standards 2 years ago and just become effective earlier this year. I'm also the currently serving for the United Nations Office for Project Services Audit Advisory Committee chair. So from that perspective, I will actually share with the technology. I will actually discuss mainly generative AI and blockchain technology, which is, I think, familiar to you guys. So generative AI, how many of you actually use generative AI, like ChatGPT or Copilot? Some, okay. Yes. So this is the reality.
More. Really, raise your hand.
Yes. See, this is a reality.
This is more likely.
If you do not use it, how can you expect your team to actually use it, right? If you don't understand it, right? If you don't, yes, thank you. If you don't understand the benefit, challenges, and limitations, I mean, it's a simple thing, right? I call that augmented technology instead of artificial, well, AI stands for artificial intelligence, but it's actually augmented intelligence. It will augment you. It doesn't actually replace you, as Rodrigo said. We haven't gone to that point where technology have the feeling and it actually has a creativity. Not yet, not yet. There's a discussion about singularity sometime, there, right? I think it will get there. But the current generative AI, whether it's ChatGPT or Copilot, I use Copilot extensively every day. It is statistical calculation of what the expected value is. I mean, simply put. I mean, this is bluntly very simple. But that's what it is, right? So if you actually input the value, it will actually bring back whatever that they will find it. So challenge on using generative AI in any sense, is about what data do you actually want to put it in, right? Yes, if you're public sector, you deal with lots of PIs, personal information, whether it's address, names, phone number, driver's license number, social security number. They're very important data. You need to protect them, first of all, right? So if you actually use ChatGPT or Copilot, the current available generative AI tool, without putting those protection, these data may be actually read by someone else, right? Because what generative AI does is it takes the data, it trains itself, right? Because the more data that it trains, the better it gets. And that's why the latest version gets better and better. It will actually come back with you much more accurate response than the initial version of whether it's ChatGPT or Copilot. It'll get much better every day, because how many of you use iPhone? Oh, okay, not many. What do you use? Samsung? Okay, anyway, but, sorry, just kidding. Sorry about that. Samsung's a good phone, yes. So it actually trains itself, like Siri, right? You use Siri? It's a generative AI. And whatever that you actually talk, by the way, Siri listens to you too, right? And then it actually, whatever that information that it actually trains itself. And when you actually buy things through Amazon, you use Amazon, right? That's also generative AI that they use. And do you know why? When you actually buy something, it'll actually pop up again, and then it says, oh, this is something that you may actually want to buy separately, right? That's all, algorithm is generative AI. So knowingly, unknowingly, you're already using it. So be careful with what data that you are going to put in, and particularly in the corporate and the public sector, it's very important. That's why many companies still not using it, right? Because there's so dangerous. If you don't just put the right protection and data security. The bias is also another big issue. Now, where does bias come from? It comes from all the data that it trains itself, right? Because it's just like a child. So how do they actually learn the language? Through their mothers and fathers and then friends and schools, right? That's all the data that they're taking into. So if you give the right data to train, yes, it will not have bias. But typically, guess what? Like in the United States, majority of the data that actually they take into demographics is white male. And that's how it's trained itself. That's why it creates the bias towards certain data set. And you have to be very careful about that, right? When you particularly use it for your work. And also integration complexity, because you already have the existing infrastructure, whether it's the operating system, accounting system, treasury system. You're gonna have to actually look at that, how you integrate that, right? Because it cannot actually exist separately. And then how do you protect the data that you have with the existing system and when you actually use the generative AI? Limitation, interpretability. This is very interesting, right? What is interpretability? It is, because generative AI is a black box. And typically the regulators want to actually understand, okay, so you build your own model by yourself. How do they know that there's no bias, there's no risk that exists, and how do you protect things? Everything needs to be explained. But if it's a black box, you can't do that. I tried to actually ask Microsoft to tell me what's actually in the Copilot, algorithm. They said, well, That's the company secret. I can't tell you. Right? That's what you get. That's why most of your organization can't use it, right? Because you cannot explain it to people how they derive to the result of what they actually produce. So that's a big thing. Another thing is that it's a resource-intensive, preposition, particularly if you want to build your own generative AI tool, because you need a large data set to train your model. Do you know how many pictures of the elephant that generative AI actually needs to recognize itself? Human child only needs 3 pictures to recognize, elephant as elephant. Generative AI requires 30,000 pictures. That's how much data that it actually requires to train itself. That's why, Amazon, Apple, Google needs your data, right, to train itself, so it becomes better. So, and then if you try to do this by yourself, and you also need to have technology specialists to build it, right? You can't really just have just regular IT people just to build this, right? So that's another limitation. Sorry, I'm actually going over very, so I'm going to go very quickly. Sorry about that. So regulatory compliance. Now, there's a huge opportunities. Like, I actually made this presentation by Copilot, as I told you in my last session yesterday. So I'm just the messenger, and trying to interpret what the Copilot actually tells me. So that's efficiency, and it took me 20 minutes to make this presentation. Normally, if I actually do it myself, it'll probably take half day. And we can do risk assessment, continuous monitoring. Blockchain, great technology, still unused. How many of you actually use blockchain? Okay, only 1, 2, 3, okay. It's a great tool. I mean, it is actually the most secure way of actually transforming, let's say, document, data, and because everything is auditable. Everything, it's a mathematical calculation, basically, right? And then everything is actually recorded. That's why, but because it's technologically complex, and also regulators I'm sorry to say this, but doesn't necessarily understand every complexity of blockchain, right? So that's why if you don't have the right regulation to regulate, you can't really use it. And there's a tokenization of the treasury bills right now undergoing, but because SEC does not necessarily understand what is needed, and that's why we can't just move it. And it's very complex, and it's not necessarily scalable. Adoption, resistance, interoperability has been talked, and this actually huge energy consumption, similar to generative AI. It does actually require lots of energy to be, but once you use it, like you can do smart contract, and like you can transfer your, let's say, trade data, your shipping documents with the blockchain, send it over immediate, instant, right? It doesn't take like a month to just ship it and then receive it, the actual thing. So anyway, so what's next? It does actually enhance our detection and audit tasks. So auditing today, sample base. Let's say 10,000 transactions, you sample 100, right? And then you extrapolate and then assume things. Now with these technologies, generative AI, we can test entire 10,000. We can find things. We will find things, and that's amazing. But to get to that, it does require lots of resources to do that. Same thing for the blockchain. It actually enhances the data integrity and then the streamlined compliance. So sorry about that. Glossary went over. But.
Thank you. Very inspiring, and yes, bravo. And I think you give very concrete examples. It's not only generating artificial intelligence, but it's really augmenting our capabilities. And I think that is key. And for those who did not raise your hand, please start using it. I think the beauty of new technologies is that developers have done the work to make it very easy to use. That's why ChatGPT had an immense uptake, because it's so easy. My mom doesn't need to know what is artificial intelligence technically, but she solves a lot of things using AI because it's just talking, it's asking questions. So the simpler, the easier it is to use it. Of course, the context, the sector matters. But number one call to action from this initial round of interaction is to use it. And blockchain. I definitely convinced that a lot more hands, hopefully in 2 years, Javier and my colleagues organizers, more hands are going to be raised. There is a beautiful initiative called LAC Change. And this is a regional consortium mainly run by IDB Lab, which is the innovation lab of our colleagues in IDB. And the main objective of this regional blockchain is to really advocate for relevant use cases. So when I was in the government of Mexico, we use it to test verifiable credentials for education. That was our main use case, so it doesn't have to be always in the auditing sector, but the initiative's there. And I think through the different working groups that you have in CReCER network, it can be very easily put into practice. So thank you, Maurisan, for those examples. And now let me switch to Spanish. Rodrigo.
Rodrigo, yesterday I was thinking about the great challenge that we have for the new generations. And so they're digital natives, but they don't have 20-year experience in auditing and in discerning if what artificial intelligence is doing makes sense, if the instructions were accurate. What strategies are you implementing at EY? I can imagine the grant programs or the younger people, so that you can find, for example, if I had just finished studying accounting, what would be your recommendation for my career path? Wow, that's a huge question. And without going further, we were saying that ChatGPT was born 30 months ago at EY. Just 1 month ago, we freed the use of our internal ChatGPT for auditing procedures. Why? Because this has to work in a framework, in a responsibility framework. And so, as we discussed before, there's a lot of information here. Here we can have biases, we can have incorrect things. And so we have to have responsible use of this. And so, to be very clear, we established a use framework. Nothing that comes from generative AI must be considered as a final document. It's just the first draft that assists you in your process of generating tests and creating a conclusion. So that's the first firewall. So there's also training and logic behind, but also how we can affect the recruiting profile at the firm. How do we seek the young people that we're going to hire? And that comes through a strategy of how we acquire talent, your talent. Technology without the right talent is just infrastructure. ChatGPT costs $20 a month, but having the right person that use it correctly and that understand the responsibility that's behind, that's what's important, because at the end of the day, we are guarantors of public faith, and our responsibility is huge. And so this is something that we really comply with. Naori-san was talking about the fact that these generative AI are public today, and I cannot put information into them. And so part of the trend is for great companies to generate their LM models. So that's internal GPT, so that they can work in internally safe systems. But while you don't have open source, you cannot transaction, and that costs a lot of money. And we have invested about $1 billion for artificial intelligence. And this is not going to go away. And one of the things that we have to foster in terms of a mindset change, and I think that this is going to make sense to you, you have to keep being curious. I would have loved to see many more hands raised in the room. ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, just to know that you used it. We have to maintain this curiosity. Auditors are curious by default. Professional skepticism reigns among us, and we always want to know more. We want to look underwater. We want to understand what's happening. And so do it with technology. The greater risk today is not to take the risk. We tend to overvalue the risk of doing something, and we undervalue the risk of doing nothing. And that's also an important mindset change. Thank you very much, and I believe that you talked about a very important topic. We have to use it, but we also have to set rules. The use framework is very important, and it's also part of many of the organizations. Just as we have information exchange standards, the frameworks are used for that. Provide reference frameworks that each organization can adapt to the context and to the pertinence of the different use cases that are going to be worked on. And Dorothy, let me get back to you. I was very excited about the fact that you are not only curious at the controller's office, you are concerned, but you also do things. And I believe that that's spirit of innovations that's key. And I would like to know what are the new developments that are coming, how you are facing training. And I believe that this is a great challenge in the public sector. Thank you very much. Regarding training between 2021 and 2023, we trained at the controller's office 600 people in terms of data analytics. And this year, sorry, but how? How? Was it face-to-face or through universities or virtually? It's activities. Some are face-to-face, some are virtual, some are diplomados. Some are diplomates. We invest a lot of research into this. And in 2024, we sent a lot of people so that they could study artificial intelligence. 100 people in the controller's office were trained in artificial intelligence in 2024. So, for example, using open code for bail procedures was something that was done by a lawyer that was trained in the controller's office on AI. So it's not only about stuff that can be done by engineers. So in the diverse professions, we need to understand that technology and its potential. Actually, this lawyer had this concern before. But when I want to say with this example, anyone has this potential, especially because training channels are more open today. And even if the controller's office hadn't done this effort, there would be other ways to get trained. And so what are we doing looking forward? Let me give you some examples. Regarding image recognition with artificial intelligence, we are reviewing mining tailings, and we were checking soil use that or land use that was prohibited in certain places, and we also crossed this with the payment of contribution and taxes that are associated with certain constructions in certain areas. We did all of this with image recognition, and we used mechanisms that had other open public services. For example, image recognition is something that we have just developed. We took information from the tax office, from the Air Force. We took others institutions' work, and we could get to better and faster results through that. So I believe that it's a good idea to take the progress made by others. For example, our National Fishing Service is doing inspections regarding the compliance of the capture that's allowed for certain species, and so the size of the fish is recognized through image recognition. And so this is how we check that they are fishing the fish that are of the right size. And we're Comping Commission reviews professional illnesses, is checking massively hundreds and thousands of medical licenses to see if they are fraudulent or not. And so instead of developing technologies internally, we have some of those, but we are especially taking developments from other institutions, and on that base, we do inspection. So that, and let me give you a disclaimer, because this is something that happened in the past and that was overcome, so that we don't have things like our first system audits. In 2012, one of our teams went to the Civil Aeronautical Division, and they reviewed how licenses were granted for Boeing pilots. And so with an identity number, they entered, they passed the tests without knowing anything. They approved, they passed the tests, and the system should have expelled them directly. And with the technical test, they should have been expelled as well, and the knowledge test should have expelled them as well, and they didn't. And at the end, our IT auditors hit on the button, and they got a Boeing pilot license. And so this is why I'm doing a disclaimer, and I'm saying that this is completely overcome, and the controller's office detected this in their first IT work. And so now we're working with the same systems done by used by institutions. Last year, we detected a large amount of weapon licenses that were given to minors and to people that were deceased using the systems from the institutions. So instead of reviewing their archives, we connected to their systems, we looked at their procedure flows, and we crossed information with other large database from the state, and we detected minors, deceased people, people that were convicted, that had received weapon licenses. And so this is why we use technology. And artificial intelligence, as Rodrigo said, is here to stay among us. And in the public sector, we must use it as well. And we cannot fire people in the public sectors. We have to reinvent the staff's capacities. Thank you very much. This is very inspiring. I would like to keep several thoughts. We have to train all people, and not only the people from the technology department. And if developing solutions is easy, and it's important to be clear on the problems that we want to tend to, that we want to solve. And if a lawyer knows how we can solve a policy problem, and if the lawyer knows how to give instructions on the functionalities that we need, it's also possible to innovate in that way. And also something very relevant, how to use all available technologies. Not everything needs to be developed at home or internally. So depending on the use case, for example, you can ask yourself, what can I use image recognition for so I can do a better job. And you also mentioned something that was present in many sessions, which is the importance of exchanging information, interoperability, and crossing information. I am getting several questions through WhatsApp, so thank you very much. Keep sending your questions, and if your question is for a specific person, please let us know. Marisan.
Gather through your professional trajectory in using these technologies and call to action to the colleagues here. Over to you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you very well.
Yes, key lessons in implementing
key
these
lessons.
technologies.
Yes, sorry. I just blanked out. Without technology, I can't operate, right? Just kidding. Key lessons learned, as shared by Dorothy and then Rodriguez, it is that technology is once again augmenting us, right? Us auditors, right? So it is not that they're replacing it. So you really have to understand how to use it first, and for what purpose do you actually want to use it, right? So Dorothy talked about the imaging and use that. We actually did in the internal audit actually use imaging. Like, there's a lot of video camera in your organization, right? What do actually people use that for? And you can actually pinpoint the movement of the people. Like, when you're actually looking for fraud, why did certain individual actually move from one point to the other? And then where that data that they're actually extracting is coming from, you can actually go through the computer. There's a audit log in the computer that you can actually use it. So you can actually use another tool to extract those things, right? And those are some examples that technology can be used. Obviously, as I mentioned about the lessons learned, is that if you don't use it properly, you're going to lose a lot of data. And when the data is lost, you're going to lose your reputation. This is actually one of the biggest risks that you will actually face. Not just you, but your third-party service provider or their subcontractor. We call that fourth party. So you really have to extend your coverage to ensure that these vendors actually have the right control to protect your data. Because otherwise, your name, your organization's name will be on the newspaper tomorrow if the data is lost. And that is, particularly if it's government, that's a big issue, right? If E&Y lose, half of the client data, sorry, but that's, and that's going to be a big issue, like Arthur Andersen, where I used to actually belong to, right? You don't want to lose another accounting firm. There's only 4 now. You can't have 3, right? So, but those are really things that we need to pay attention to every day when you actually use the technology. Any technology, whether it's generative AI or blockchain, or for that matter, because you are in charge of those technology and data. You need to really understand where the data comes from, where the data goes, and then how it's being processed. This is a very standard thing, and it's fundamental thing that we all have to actually understand. And there's been many cases of lessons learned on misuse of the data or lost data, and through the incorrect use of the technology.
I agree, and I think a lot of reflections on that we are in charge and we are responsible to making sure that technology is used according to context and needs, but also with the right safeguards in place. Voy a cambiar al español ahora y vamos a ir.
I'm now going to switch to Spanish. Thanks to the people that have sent the questions. And tomorrow, for the Chile Controller's Office, For Chilean Controller's Office, do you have in your plans, in your, okay, let's try to respond briefly. Is it in your plans to generate, to use artificial intelligence
Tax returns.
for your tax returns? Yes, there's a proposal that has that internal taxes has used for citizens for many years, and that's created with technology. And you just have to review if it's well executed or if certain information is missing. And there's something that's very important, Dorothy, regarding that has not been mentioned, and it's also related to the tax aspect, and that's one of the first use cases. Agentic AI. I don't know if you have heard about that. It's baby steps, but artificial intelligence is going from generating content to ChatGPT to tell us, and for those who have iPhones and not Samsung phones, you move your screens and they will tell you if your flight is at 4 p.m., you have to leave 45 minutes before. Agentic AI is going to order the Uber to go to the airport. So it goes from generation to action. And today, those are baby steps, but in a year, it's going to become more real. And so, in tax terms, and EY just signed an alliance with NVIDIA for the creation of for agentic AI in the tax world. And there's a lot of information, there's a lot of reasoning, but we have to go to action. And so we're going to see that AI is not only going to assist me, is going to take actions in my place without consulting me based on the behavior that we have. And that's another game changer. So in 18 months, we will see that to visit my mother, for example, the phone is going to tell me, I asked you for, I ordered the Uber so that you get to your mom's home in time. So in 2 years, we will have of this conference. In this conference, in 2 years, we will have a panel on emerging technologies. We'll talk about that. So how are auditing process changing in public hirings if we consider artificial intelligence? Are there policies, frameworks that you can share? Maybe internationally, Morrison? Ya hay una regla de inteligencia artificial en la Unión
The generative AI into different categories. So the one that actually is most risky is the infrastructure. That, let's say, generative AI or some type of artificial intelligence used to manage, let's say, power plant or water, supply, the airport. Those are really important tools that really needs to be secured, protected, and so in the order of the importance, like ChatGPT Copilot is probably the bottom because it's actually publicly available. It doesn't actually deal with the personal information. So, but the EU already has the rule, right? So I wouldn't be surprised that all the other countries are actually waking up and then, making that similar rule.
Quizás agregar ahí de la parte de los
I would like to add something there regarding contracts. We have to have specific clauses to manage information. Today, we know that with cloud computing, we don't have local servers. They are spread out in several areas of the world, and they are subject to different regulations. And so your contract has to be sufficient so that you can provide service, protecting data, and you have to understand where is your data and how it's spreading through the world. And also clients have some skepticism regarding the tools that are used. Why? Because Copilot, for example, Copilot is incredible. Of course it is. But it also has access to your OneDrive. And in your OneDrive, you can have information. For example, I have 20 clients, so I might have information on 20 clients. And Copilot can access that information without my consent. And we have to be careful about that. How you explain to our clients if your information is secure. That's very important regarding confidentiality. And I'm going to ask several questions on that, and then we will go to a final round, and we'll do a summary on everything that we said. I would like to talk about safeguards. How does EY make sure, maybe just like you have the internal use framework, what is changing in your procurement processes so that you can safeguard all of the information that you have access to? Because today, in one click, I can do the crossings. Why? Because I have the accounting information from my client. But what does that entail from the ethical point of view? And I would say the same thing for the controller's office. Like, for example, okay, I'm going to audit a system. Okay, but you have to use data that is not necessarily from the controller's office, and it comes from other institutions. So what are your safeguards? And same for you, Mauricen.
In terms of safeguards and ethical use.
A ver, la confidencialidad es algo inherente al auditor externo.
Confidentiality is inherent to the external auditor. We have rules and we have a framework that we have to follow inside and outside the organization. And so it's something that's in terms of technology, a lot of doors are opened. Our generative AI is our own, and it lives in our cloud, and it's administered by us, and no one has access to that. We are one of the auditing firms that develop our own ChatGPT, and so the information that we use doesn't go anywhere, and no one has access except EY. So that's our first important firewall. And every time that we develop our artificial intelligence platform that's called EY Fabrics, we have a framework, an operations framework, in which tools that are developed have necessarily gone through controls, cybersecurity, to make sure that the interaction that we have between the teams, the client, because something that's very important today is that our clients have access to our technology. So today, this is tripartite. With my technology, we have access to our, and then the third one, there's a cloud computing, and that's creating a triangle. And so we have increased the amount of controls that we need to have, and also the clients demand this. Today, no client agrees to transfer information through any means. The days in which we transferred information through email are gone because there's no security. And so in your day-to-day operations, you have to have security procedures that then become very usual. Well, we have several controls. First of all, we have strengthened the contract clauses for the companies that provide some sort of technology. And we are rechecking that because since it changes so swiftly, we have new risks all the time. And all the people present here know this. We have to update this permanently. Another security element has to do with running tests in isolated environments. And this is a very sensitive matter. When we connect to institutions to do remote inspection, or when we do even field inspections, we have to check through our internal auditing to see how our officials are using data. We have strengthened the internal audit team, checking things that we didn't check before, and we have reviewing thousands of topics internally to see how they administer data, manage data. And we also look at the classical thing that we looked at, if our inspectors are committing any kind of regularity and how they're using data. They must not, for example, manage databases and sell them, for example. So we have to control those risks internally. And so we have 3 lines: contractual, legal, new technologies administered or managed in a safe system, not only, as Rodrigo was saying, in a cloud that's our own, but also with safeguards that are technological and a constant monitoring of what our people are doing, because in the end, people also generate risk situations when we connect a pen drive, when we connect a technological device that can leave an open door through which anyone can enter maliciously. Mauri-san.
Encrypt everything, right? That, if it's important information, you need to encrypt. And that, and basic really use of the proper password control. I mean, that's so basic, right? That's because most of the data leak actually happens within your organization, not from the outside. And, your disgruntled employee will actually, divulge the information. And that's what you're going to have to protect.
Very clear and direct. Encrypt everything. Espero que estén igual de inspirados e inspiradas. Yo me llevo muchísimas ideas que implementar en el día.
I hope this inspired you. I will take many great ideas from this for my day-to-day work. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to your active participation and your attention. Thanks to my practice colleagues and to our colleagues from IDB and the other organizations that have been present here. The banks are doing their homework or their jobs. We have a presidency that supports and fosters this hand in hand with our member countries, because we work for you in all topics that have to do with foundational technologies, connectivity, data centers, but also all technological governance topics that are key: cybersecurity, privacy, reference frameworks, and also use cases. And we have a question on education, and if this was an education congress, theme would be the same. How do we safeguard educational registries? How do we use artificial intelligence to improve customized learning and retention? And what's important is the problems that need to be solved in each sector, and how we use technology hand in hand with experience. And a very important thought, we are the generation that will get to 2030, and Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, are everyone's responsibility, and the digital transformation work is an ecosystem work. It was clear in Dorothy's message. There's a call to action to adopt technology, to train absolutely everyone that's in our environment, our work teams, our clients, and use this in an ethical and responsible fashion so that we can be much more efficient, so that we can become more entrepreneurial and innovative. Thank you very much for the invitation to moderate this panel, and I give the floor to our MC. Excellent panel. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And now we're going to have a pause, a 15-minute pause, so that you can stretch your legs and have a cup of coffee, and we will come back for the last part of it.